from the Prime Minister of New Zealand, but most importantly to say thank you for the training that you're doing and the training that you are receiving. This is the second time I've come to see this training for the front line in Ukraine. And just as with the first time, I find it incredibly humbling to see the training that is being done here. The number of countries that are coming together, including obviously United Kingdom, New Zealand, Australia, many other countries here, coming together to do vital training with our Ukrainian friends and colleagues and allies. It's really humbling. It's incredibly professional. It could not be more important 3 years into this conflict. And it's so important in terms of the training that's being done. This morning we saw some of the work you're doing in terms of trench warfare, also the work clearing mines and training for that. Only a few weeks ago I was in Kyiv. I was in the burns unit of a major hospital in Kyiv, and I saw some of those returning from the front line who've got blast injuries. And so for me this was very, very real training. But also for the Ukrainians here and in Ukraine, the symbolism of so many countries coming together to work together on this training as a professional commitment, but also as a symbol of allies standing together.
Something profoundly unsettling is rippling through the British Army, an undercurrent that can no longer be dismissed as routine military matters. And no, this isn't your typical training drill or a minor dispute over pay grades.
Ukraine. To our Ukrainian colleagues here, I just want to say, again, thank you for coming to this training. It is incredible to see the resilience and inspiration that you have in terms of what you're going on to do from here back to the front line, or to the first time to the front line. I know some here are coming for the second time, I think, or even the third time back to training, maybe to take that training on to people in country. Hugely important. And again, humbling, the sense that so many people have come from different backgrounds, civilian backgrounds, doing all sorts of other jobs, and now heading either to the front line for the first time or heading back to the front line. I don't think it could come at a more important point. I think it is incredible that all of the predictions at the beginning of this conflict were that the aggressor, Russia, would succeed very quickly, and they didn't, because of the resilience of the Ukrainians, because you fought back and fought for your country, and fought for all of us in fighting for your country. Now, 3 years in, it's important that we all step up on defence and security. There's been an intense debate about this in the last few months, how all of the countries, not just in Europe, but way beyond Europe, need to step up on security and defence. That's why we have stepped up by making sure that we're going to go to 2.5% GDP on our defence spend, rising to 3%. That's the biggest sustained increase since the Cold War, making that commitment. New Zealand making a similar commitment just recently to increase their defence spend, and also to bring together what we call the coalition of the willing, which is those...
Soldiers are quietly but decisively walking away from their posts. And it's not because of money, benefits, or even political scandals. What's unfolding strikes much deeper, hitting at the very core of loyalty, purpose, and national identity. The system's foundations are trembling under the weight of something far more serious than Westminster would like to admit. Standing awkwardly at the centre of this growing storm is none other than Keir Starmer. This isn't just another internal army shuffle, it's a flashing red warning light, one that tells us loud and clear that a dangerous threshold has been crossed. When you zoom out and see the full landscape, the message becomes impossible to ignore. A silent rebellion is taking shape, and more voices are gathering the courage to say what many have long whispered: enough is enough. Good-day entry politics thwart the idea of a full-blown exodus. And it's not happening because soldiers are reaching the natural end of their careers by the day. It's not just a handful of resignations or the occasional early retirement anymore. What we're witnessing is the early stages of a full-blown exodus. And it's not happening because soldiers are reaching the natural end of their careers. These aren't retirements prompted by age or injury, they're voluntary resignations, spanning different regiments and ranks, coming from individuals who are still in the prime of their service. In short, They're leaving because they choose to leave, not because they must. And that choice should concern every single one of us. This isn't just a staffing shortage or a bureaucratic problem. It's an alarm bell ringing louder with every resignation. Highly trained, highly skilled professionals, men and women who once wore the British uniform with pride, are stepping away from service altogether. The question we must confront is stark and unsettling. What's driving so many to walk away from something they once considered their calling? The answer isn't as simple as poor living conditions, outdated equipment, or budget cuts. Those complaints have existed for decades, yet soldiers stayed. What's unfolding now digs far deeper. It strikes at the very heart of what it means to serve. More and more soldiers are beginning to question the true nature of the missions they're being asked to support. They aren't just asking how they're being treated, they're asking what exactly they are fighting for. Instead of defending British soil or protecting national interests, there's a growing sense that the military is being steered into conflicts that have little to do with genuine national security. And that's a fundamental shift, one that cuts straight through the culture of service and loyalty that once held the forces together. The discomfort isn't coming from a place of fear or laziness, it's a moral reckoning. It's the uncomfortable realization that they may be used, not as defenders of their homeland, but as pawns in someone else's political game. And that realization is pushing many to make the hardest decision of all, to step away from the uniform they once wore with unwavering pride. At the heart of this rising discontent lies one word that keeps coming up: Ukraine. Inside military circles and across the broader public, a shared unease is spreading. Many now believe the UK's involvement in Ukraine isn't limited to providing weapons, intelligence, or humanitarian aid. There's a looming fear that Britain is edging dangerously close to full military entanglement, boots on the ground in a conflict far from home. And while this concern grows, another worrying trend is emerging. Recruitment numbers are plummeting. The traditional pipeline of fresh volunteers, which once ensured the military's strength, is drying up. Faced with a dwindling pool of willing recruits, the government is being forced to confront an uncomfortable reality. When voluntary enlistment fails to meet military demands, history shows there's only one alternative: conscription. What once seemed like a relic of the past, mandatory military service, is starting to creep back into national conversations, not as a distant hypothetical, but as a very real possibility. And for those who signed up to protect their nation, the prospect of being forced into someone else's war is deeply unsettling. Their resignations are not about cowardice or desertion. They're a loud, clear protest against being dragged into conflicts they never agreed to fight. To be clear, many of these departing soldiers are not abandoning their sense of duty to Britain. In fact, they'll tell you outright, if Britain were attacked tomorrow, they would be among the first to take up arms and defend it. Their loyalty to the nation remains unshaken. What they are rejecting is something fundamentally different: the idea of becoming pawns in international power struggles that have little to do with the protection of British soil. These are not naive recruits blindly waving flags at every government command. Today's service members are more informed, more globally connected, and more critical than ever before. They can see through patriotic slogans and emotional appeals when those are used to mask deeper political ambitions. In their eyes, what's happening isn't about national defence anymore. It's about politicians' names like Zelensky, Starmer, and others, pushing Britain deeper into foreign entanglements for reasons that have little to do with protecting the people back home. When soldiers walk away under these circumstances, it's not an act of fear, it's an act of principle. A refusal to be used as instruments in games of power and prestige that risk lives without clear or just cause. To those service members who have stepped away, you deserve our respect, not our judgment. You haven't betrayed your country, you haven't abandoned your duty. What you have done is something far more courageous. You have defended a deeper principle: the right to choose how and why you risk your life. Walking away from blind obedience takes more strength than following orders without question. It's a powerful stand for personal conscience in a time when political agendas are blurring the lines between defence and exploitation. And let's be brutally honest, the warning signs that the military is being repurposed for political games are everywhere. You only have to glance toward Birmingham to see how this dangerous trend is taking shape in real time. Whispers are growing louder. Whispers that British soldiers could soon be deployed to tackle the city's waste crisis, a task that has absolutely nothing to do with national security and everything to do with covering up civil failures. And let's be blunt about it. Sending trained military personnel to collect rubbish off the streets is not just a bad idea, it's an outright insult. It's a gross misuse of their training, their discipline and their dedication. Soldiers are not sanitation workers. They were not trained to wield brooms and collect bin bags because local councils and trade unions failed to do their jobs. To turn soldiers into clean-up crews for domestic mismanagement would mark one of the most shameful misuses of the British Armed Forces in modern history. It would drag down the honour and sacrifice that military service represents, turning it into little more than a political band-aid for failing public institutions. If this is the kind of solution a Labour-led government is putting forward, it's not a solution at all. It's a glaring warning about the future. A future where the military isn't respected as a national shield, but repurposed as a cheap tool for political theatre. This isn't about service to the country anymore. It's about control. And the consequences of allowing that shift to happen would be profound and irreversible. This isn't about supporting the troops. It's about controlling them. What's unfolding is a systematic distortion of the military's role, reshaping the armed forces into just another extension of the state's machinery. Instead of standing as an independent institution devoted to national defence, the military risks being reduced to a political tool, deployed at the whim of whichever government happens to be in power, whether it's sending soldiers to foreign wars that have no clear link to Britain's safety, or forcing them into domestic tasks like cleaning up after bureaucratic failures. The outcome remains the same: a betrayal of the armed forces' true purpose. Once that line is crossed, it becomes dangerously easy to justify further abuses. The military becomes less about protection and more about convenience, less about honour and more about optics. And if we allow that transformation to continue unchecked, the loss won't just be felt within the ranks. It will ripple across every part of society, eroding trust in one of the last institutions still widely respected by the public. If anyone in Birmingham or the surrounding areas notices signs of military involvement, even something as small as soldiers in uniform performing civil duties, documenting it will be crucial. Photos, videos and eyewitness accounts aren't just important locally, they're essential for raising national awareness. Because this isn't merely a Birmingham issue anymore, it's a flashing warning that a much broader, more troubling shift is underway. The quiet repurposing of the armed forces is happening in plain sight, and the more evidence the public can gather, the harder it becomes for officials to dismiss these developments as isolated or temporary measures. This is about transparency. It's about making sure that when decisions are made behind closed doors, decisions that fundamentally alter the role of the military, the public isn't kept in the dark. Every small report, every captured moment matters, because when institutions start to be quietly re-engineered, the first and best defense is exposure. It's becoming harder and harder for new members to join the ranks without facing barriers. Tensions within the armed forces are running high, and the atmosphere is growing more volatile with every passing day. Some believe the government might try to ease the pressure through redundancy packages or other temporary fixes. But let's be clear, these are not real solutions. They're just desperate attempts to paper over deeper cracks. What's happening inside the military right now isn't just a staffing issue or a minor morale dip. It's a sign of a much larger, much more serious breakdown of trust between those who serve and those who command. And if the government thinks it can patch things up without addressing the real causes, it's gravely mistaken. Now take a look at this.
Inquiry into the terrible attack in Nottingham. I know that we welcomed by the families, by everyone in the city and across my home county of Nottinghamshire. So I fully support my right honourable friend's welcome decision. Mr. Speaker, Greg O'Callaghan is a serving immigration judge who decides asylum and deportation appeals. It took nothing more than a basic Google search to uncover his past comments that the Conservative Party should be treated the same way as Nazis and cancer. As a sitting judge, he's publicly supported Labour's plans to scrap the Rwanda scheme and for illegal entry into the United Kingdom to be decriminalised. Does the Lord Chancellor believe this is compatible with judicial impartiality? And if not, what does she intend to do about it?
Secretary of State.
Well, firstly, let me thank the Right Honourable gentleman for the remarks he made in relation to the new Nottingham inquiry. I'm very grateful for his support. I'm sure the whole House will want to see that inquiry come to as quick a conclusion as possible. Let me say to him, when people might have complaints to make about judges, there is a placed mechanism for them to do so by making a complaint to the Judicial Complaints Office. If he wishes to make a complaint, he can do so. What I'm not going to do is indulge in personal, effectively doxing of judges, not when judges are simply doing their job of applying the law in the cases that appear before them. If there are complaints to be made about judicial conduct, I'm sure the Shadow Lord Chancellor knows how to go about doing it.
Can I just say we have to be careful on what we're doing, and we're not stepping into an area we should be. We're not meant to criticise judges, and this House wouldn't do so. And I'm sure we'd like to change the tone. Roy Jennings.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it is important that judges and the manner in which they are appointed is properly scrutinised in this House, and I won't shy away from that. Mr. Speaker, Helen Pitcher was forced to resign in disgrace as the chair of the Criminal Cases Review Commission after a formal panel found that she'd failed in her duties during one of the worst miscarriages of justice in recent memory. But she's still in charge of judicial appointments, despite judges appearing in the media every week now for their activism. Her commission has failed to conduct the most basic checks on potential judges, either out of sheer incompetence or out of sympathy with their hard-left open borders views. The commission is broken and is bringing the independence of the judiciary into disrepute. How much longer will it take for the Justice Secretary to act and to remove the chair of this commission from her position and defend the independence and reputation of the judiciary?
I'm afraid he can't elide the process for the appointment of judges with a wider attack on the independence of the judiciary. I would hope that he would take the admonishment from the Speaker and the clear approbation of this House to reflect on the way in which he is approaching his role. If there are complaints to be made about judicial conduct, there is already a robust process in place to do so, and if the Shadow Chancellor wants to avail himself of that, I'm sure, given how active he is, he'll be happy to do so. What is completely improper is to take his position in this House to indulge in a wider attack of the judiciary at a time when we know that judicial security has been compromised.
Order, please. It is topicals with other members to get in. It's a very... Tension's running high.
If you found today's breakdown helpful or thought-provoking, make sure to give the video a like. It helps more people see what's really happening beneath the surface.